What I will say about podcasting and what our guests have experienced is that when they do come on the podcast, there are
Mm-hmm.
questions that the person may ask you that
Mm-hmm.
may relate to something they had in them, or something they've heard someone ask them that they themselves couldn't answer. So, like in your case, the
Mm-hmm.
person probably asked you something that she's like, well, you know what? I never knew that she was able to solve this specific problem. Because when you're explaining it and someone's asking, or you're just talking about your business, I find that we're not really able to explain really well or make it clear
Mm-hmm.
enough exactly what we do and who we serve.
Right.
And if we explain it, it's just very short. Oh, well, my name is XYZ. I do. So like, for example, when you first came on and we're talking about being a chiropractor, it's so much easier for people to understand.
Yes.
Over the years, they've heard, okay, well, a chiropractor does this, 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 and this.
Yes.
When you're explaining something that's not really easy for people to grasp, they're like, yeah, I heard her say, and what I think I heard her say was.
Yeah.
But like, I'm asking you all of these things. There's someone that's going to watch this and say, oh, you know what? I never even thought about that. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Entrepreneurial Truth podcast. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Briana Bender, a chiropractor turned mind body practitioner who completely reinvented her career after her own health challenges wouldn't respond to traditional approaches. She now works with clients in and persons around the world using neuro-emotional technique and mind-body methods. Dr. Briana Bender, thank you so much for joining us today. Tell our audience a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Thank you so much for having me. So, yeah, that's a pretty good intro. So, I'm trained as a chiropractor, and I also teach seminars all over the country to mostly chiropractors. And I don't know, I was going through kind of a couple of things, some health issues that weren't resolving with all of the knowledge that I had. And also this kind of want to do something professionally in the business world, but I didn't really know what that was. So I don't know if I believe in coincidences, but this sort of happened where I got this neuro emotional technique treatment from a friend of mine. And I'm like, what is this? I never knew what it was. I knew people that did it, but I didn't really know anything about it. And then um, basically 30 days later, my all of my very persistent symptoms had kind of just evaporated into the wind. And I was like, what just happened? It's very perplexing to me. So that kind of reshaped kind of the way I was thinking about healing and like this stuck stress in the body. And I was like, okay, I'm definitely missing a big part of this. And then simultaneously, I was going through a life transition, and not simultaneously, a little bit after. And I was just like, I don't want to, as amazing as chiropractic is, I think everybody should get chiropractic care. I was like, I don't want to be the one delivering the service of an adjustment. I don't want to be out there just hitting the tables, so to speak. And I felt bad about it for a while. And I was just like, it's just not, I want to be a patient. I don't really want to be a practitioner. And so those two forces kind of led me into kind of make up what I'm doing now, which is just this mind body work exclusively. So I don't deliver other services. I don't have a menu. I just felt so passionate about doing that I was like, okay, I'm just going to go all in and do this mind body work. So
Wow.
that's
Wow.
kind of how I ended up here.
Oh, okay. So I need to dive into what that looks like, because now you have this training and you're identifying as Dr. Briana Bender, right?
Mm-hmm.
Chiropractor. How did you change that mindset to be, you know what, this is not where I'm gonna be, and I'd prefer to be this. Like, how easy was it for you to shift from that persona?
It was not easy at all. I had to do a lot of work on myself, and not even to take any credit. I was going through, like I mentioned before, I was going through a life transition, which was a breakup from a long-term relationship. And so I kind of was like forced, for lack of a word. There was a lot of kind of pain that kind of elevated me into the next step. So I had to choose something to do. And this was like, I'm like, okay, well, if I'm going to do something, why don't I do something that's going to light my soul on fire and going to be transformational for other people? Like just something that I felt very, very called to do. But it wasn't easy. I had to do a lot of like identity work, and like, it's okay. You can still use that license that you paid $200,000 for. You can still use that to help people, just in a different way. So, but I would say the process took, probably a year for me to do a lot of that work around. Like, now I think it's really cool when people shift their careers, or they're like, okay, I did that for 10 years. Now I'm doing this. And I'm like, good for you, because it is difficult. And especially being an entrepreneur, you're going all in on yourself, and especially solopreneur. That's kind of, you want to find out what your strengths and weaknesses are. Do that because you quickly identify where you need to work on things. But that can also be such a gift, right? To have that mirror to show you, okay, here's where you're not wanting to get on social media. You don't want to show your face. Okay, why? Like, what is that? Diving into, what are you afraid of? Are you afraid of judgment? Are you afraid that you're not good enough? Are you, whatever that is, which goes beautifully with my work. It's like, what is underneath that? What's the layer underneath that? And the more that I've worked on those kinds of things, because especially social media, being an entrepreneur and promoting yourself that way is very strange to me. I'm like, it feels very like narcissistic or something. It's like, I've got to be in every single picture and I've got to be in every single video. Very strange. So I had to reframe a lot of things and dig into why I was feeling hesitant about doing, a lot of things that the business required of me.
Wow. And how are you showing up as a doctor before? So in the chiropractic, was it easy? Like, you've had all of this training, so now it's kind of easy to step into that role. Because now,
well, what was easy about it was, so I'm doing this, I teach, so I'm teaching these seminars, which everybody's very familiar with that in my industry. And then if you tell pretty much anybody you're a chiropractor, everyone's like, okay, got it. You start telling somebody you're a mind body practitioner, that you do mind body work, that you do neuro emotional stuff, that you're getting stuck stress out of the body. And people are like, what is that? So a whole different level of communication skills that I didn't have, much more difficult to get that message across to people that have no idea about that world, than just saying like, I'm a chiropractor, and then everybody sort of formulates what that means to them. If you say I'm a mind body practitioner, people are like, what is that?
Yeah.
So
that's one of those hard to communicate skills, like hard to communicate practices. Like, how do you communicate the business you're in effectively to actually let people know as easily, like,
yes,
as a chiropractor? Yeah,
absolutely. It's much more difficult because no one knows about it.
Right.
At all. So there is a gift in that, but there's also a challenge.
And how do you now promote that kind of business, and what approach do you take to being able to get your business out there and explain it to people who really don't understand what it is you're doing?
Yeah, so honestly, like, this is truth, right? I'm still figuring that out and tightening it up. I feel like, mind body work, it should be a given that the mind and the body are one, like, organism. But we've spent so many generations where we've thought, okay, mind problems are mind problems and body problems are body problems. So like your back pain has nothing to do with your anxiety, or your gut issue has nothing to do with your depression. And that's just not true. And
Mhm.
so trying to communicate the fact that these things all work together, it makes sense pretty quickly if I say you've had chronic symptoms. Like mind body work is not for the person that played tennis yesterday and they have a sore elbow.
Right.
That's not a stuck stress. That's not an emotional stored stress. That's just you overworked your muscle and now you've got this pain. What this work is for people that have had chronic mind or body issues. It doesn't really matter what they are, that they can't get rid of elsewhere. That's what I kind of use as my communication tool. So you've done the therapy. All my clients, they do all the things that are right. They do all the supplements, they do all the therapy, the mindset work, they go to the chiropractor, they go to the acupuncturist, they do yoga, they do stretches, they do all kinds of things. They're optimizing their sleep score with their little rings and stuff. And they're still waking up every day with the same symptoms or symptoms flaring back up. And none of the management techniques are really, responding the way that they want in their body. So I basically tell them if you haven't responded the way that you want in other ways, with other methods, with other practitioners, then that's likely that there's this stuck emotional stress. The body's keeping the score because we're running this sympathetic fight or flight reaction constantly from this very primitive part of your brain. And you can't turn it off just by thinking about it or taking deep breaths. So you have to get the mind body work to shut off that reaction, which is driving the symptoms.
And what does that look like? What does taking care of that look like?
So it's very gentle. Most people, when we go through the treatment, I use some different techniques to try to find out what's underneath that layer. So kind of just like I went through in my business, why am I afraid to do XYZ? Going through and finding those deeper layers. And I feel like that can kind of scare people. And I'm like, let's do the deeper work. Let's find the root cause. And I was like, oh my gosh, what are you going to find out? So it's not scary. It's not like mental health therapy. It's not a lot of talking, but there is some discovery going on. Okay, there's something else. There's something else. There's some layer beneath that. So there's a bit of a discovery of what is that, finding out what kind of emotion goes with that. And that looks a little bit different in the virtual world versus in person.
Right.
But because in person, I'm using the patient's body as a biofeedback tool. I'm doing muscle testing to lead the treatment. But then we're just linking up a couple of traditional Chinese acupuncture points is kind of the easy way to describe it. And holding a snapshot of what we found out about this story, whether it's historically factual or not, it's an emotional reality. We're holding that in our mind and a couple of these little harmless points on the body and taking deep breaths and releasing those neuropeptides that have accumulated in the body tissues. And people will just be like, oh my gosh, I don't, a lot of people come up and they're just like, what was that? That was very like gentle and it's very kind of elegant. And then sometimes people will immediately be like, oh my gosh, my neck doesn't hurt. It's hurt for 12 years.
Wow.
That's potentially how powerful it is. Because once you find the root, whatever that is,
right.
If it's emotional and you release it, then you can get some amazing transformation. If it's a structural thing and you get adjusted, of course, that's going to get rid of that pain. So whatever the root is, but I'm using these chronic symptoms that haven't responded elsewhere. It's sort of my screening test to get to that. So it looks very gentle. It's very natural, holistic. There's nothing you're putting in your body. You're just touching different points on your body and then thinking through this sort of snapshot of what we found in our discovery work.
And how do you find that that's affecting when people have areas that they're not addressing, right? How do you find that that's affecting them overall in their business?
Yeah, so I think it's huge. Now, if you're looking at like ambitious, high level business people, they're very accustomed to kind of just forcing through
Mm-hmm.
whatever issues they're going through. If they've got physical symptoms, like their heart races or their stomach flips or their mind is, you know, foggy or they're not sleeping well, they'll just push through because they're like, I'm just gonna
Power
go
through it.
for it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think those things for those people kind of just play quietly in the background
Mm-hmm.
until they have some type of overflow, some type of crisis. For a lot of people, they have some information on the surface. Like, yeah, I need to work better on my, schedule. I need to, get my calendar cleaned up, or I need to prioritize something. So they're working on those kind of information and the systems pretty well. I think with the work that I'm doing, it's not really that they're consciously ignoring it. It's something that they've never really correlated that's
Mm-hmm.
underneath the surface. And when we correlate that, then they're like, oh my gosh, I never realized that. Like, should I share a story with you?
Yeah, of course.
So, okay, so I had this client, she came to me for lack of a better term, money blocks. So she's in her late 30s. She's been operating her own business for several years. And every single month, she's like, am I going to be able to pay my mortgage? Am I going to be able to pay my bills? She can't fill up her business. And then if she did have a good month in her business, something would happen. Like her car would break down or her roof would break or something would go on, like some calamity.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's like, I don't know what's going on, but she's like, I know I'm having like some type of block with money. So we did some of this work, and what we found was that in her childhood, no, she's never thought about this as like having anything to do with her business now, but in her childhood, her parents got a divorce and her dad was the one that made the money. And the mom told her as a young child, when you're over at your dad's, if you see any money laying out, just take it. If it's on the nightstand or the counter or whatever, like, we need the money, so take the money. And she did that. She thought she was doing what she was supposed to for survival, right? And so when we found that, what's happening in the system I'm working with is the limbic system. And it's this very primitive, we call it the reptilian brain. And so it's only obsessed with living, surviving. Okay, it doesn't really care about much else. And saving energy. So keeping you average or less and keeping you alive. So what had been recorded in that system that doesn't make logical sense, what had been recorded was money's a threat, money is shameful, it's bad for me to have money. If you get money, you got to get rid of it because it is bad to have it. So,
Whoa.
right? So it doesn't make logical sense, but it makes sense like on a very base level.
Mm-hmm.
So she was like, oh my gosh. I mean, she just bawled her eyes out because she's like, I cannot believe I've been living my life like this. And so we did a bunch of clearing that day. And I didn't see her again for several months, maybe four or 5 months. Guess what? And not due only to me. Of course, this is multifactorial. She's doing the business work. She's learning new things. And of course, but her business is completely full. She cannot take any more business. And she's like, I've had 2 months now where I've not worried about paying any bills. Like, I'm not up at night. I'm not worried. So I'm just like, that's how powerful getting rid of those responses are. You just never know kind of where that trigger's coming from until you do some of this stuff. So yeah, that was a really cool, just like business story.
That is
with mind
awesome.
body work.
That is awesome. That is, and it's so funny how so many people are going around and they are trying every method to scale and grow.
Yes.
And they don't understand that they may be the bottleneck because there may be something there that they don't recognize.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. So I think as much as this work is for health problems, it is just as much for business problems and just as much for relationship problems, because there's a book called Radical Responsibility. It's a business book. But yes, looking at yourself as, okay, what responsibility do I have in this process or in this failure of sorts? Even people with employees, like, okay, the employee failed to do XYZ. What's my responsibility in that? But
Mhm.
there's much responsibility, like you're saying, with the bottleneck. Like, are you the one? And you may not even be consciously aware.
Mhm.
Like this story, like totally out of left field. Like, how would you ever even correlate that or deal with it? Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, you can absolutely be the bottleneck for sure. It gets a little ethereal, but you kind of start getting into that universal power of attraction kind of thing,
Right.
repelling or attracting things, on that level too, which is a little out there for some people, but it seems to prove true for most situations.
And how are you taking from a branding standpoint for your new business? Um, are you diving into that side where you said like woo woo and kind of like I know there's some sort of attachment and it's just an attachment, I believe, that
Mhm.
over time people have said, hey, listen, it's easier to separate what we can understand from what we can't understand. And what we can't understand is labeled as woo. It doesn't mean that it's not right. It just means
True.
that that's how we're going to address it or label it.
Yeah. So I like that. I like that explanation a lot. So I don't personally like the term woo woo. Some of my colleagues use it, and even some of my patients, like one of my patients, which I adore this patient, but she's like, yeah, I try to explain some of this stuff to my husband, and he's like, okay, just go do your woo woo. And so we laugh about it. Um, I think in the mind body world, there are some things that are more spiritual
Right.
or more energy based or whatever. What I do is very neurologically based. And we've got a lot of research now showing a lot of this stuff with functional MRIs of the brain and stuff like that. And so um, I don't personally hold on to that like woo woo thing, um, because I feel like the science is more in the realm of like a quantum physics, which is
Mhm.
definitely difficult for people to understand. Um, but I don't really grab onto that as my like, here's my flag, let's do some woo woo. But I've also experienced some healing modalities that I do not understand whatsoever. But
Wow.
they got me results, and I'm like, I have a healthy respect for things I don't understand, and I've been a little bit adventurous in that realm. But no, I don't really use that in my marketing, um, generally speaking. So
And what do you find is working now? Um, because you've pivoted and it's a big shift. What do you find is working now to grow your business?
yeah, what's interesting about that is I haven't found, like that one thing. I'm like, okay, that's the thing. If I say that and do that, then, I will have clients, trying to get on my schedule. I have found when I'm the busiest, I'm nurturing a lot of different things.
Hmm.
So, I'm speaking, I'm doing this kind of interaction with you on a podcast, which is a totally new thing for me. But I do in person Let me tell you this example that I was just sharing with a friend yesterday. So I have a friend, a pretty close friend that I've shared a lot of, personal things with. We're pretty close. And she's a psychiatric nurse practitioner. Okay. So we've talked a lot about science. We've talked a lot about mind body work. She knows all of these things, but never really expressed any interest in collaborating with care or any cases together. And I did a podcast a couple of weeks ago where I was talking about my work. It was a health kind of podcast. And I shared that on my social media. Well, she listened to it. And the next day she's like, I want to send you a couple of my clients. And I'm like, what? So maybe you can explain this to me. It's like I didn't change. My skills didn't change. My service didn't change. My knowledge didn't change. My personal relationship with her was there, but somehow that positioning or that authority stack, I don't know what it was, but that sort of opened the door. And so that's what I'm noticing that's working, is kind of doing a lot of different things.
So what I will say about podcasting and what our guests have experienced is that when they do come on the podcast, there are questions that the person may ask you that may relate to something they had in them, or something they've heard someone ask them that they themselves couldn't answer. So like in your case, the person probably asked you something that she's like, well, you know what? I never knew that she was able to solve this specific problem. Because when you're explaining it and someone's asking, or you're just talking about your business, I find that we're not really able to explain really well or make it clear enough exactly what we do and who we serve. Right. And if we explain it, it's just very short. Oh, well, my name is XYZ. I do. So like, for example, when you first came on and we're talking about being a chiropractor, it's so much easier for people to understand.
Yes.
Over the years, they've heard, okay, well, a chiropractor does this, 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 and this.
Yes.
When you're explaining something that's not really easy for people to grasp, they're like, yeah, I heard her say, and what I think I heard her say was.
Yeah.
But like, I'm asking you all of these things. There's someone that's going to watch this and say, oh, you know what? I never even thought about that.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I never have thought about it that way. But I think when you're trying to communicate the value of what you do, in a sense, you're the bottleneck, because you're only communicating what you think people want to hear.
Correct.
You're not actually answering necessarily a question that they actually have.
Correct.
So that's a really good point. And I think the other power of doing this kind of content is it's long form. Like, how much can you teach someone in 7 seconds?
Correct. Yeah. From watching your Instagram reel, you can't really learn that much.
Yeah. No.
And there's so many questions people have about growing their business, about and remember too, there's also information overload.
Absolutely.
So you have all of this information coming at you at one time, and you're not quite sure what's going to work for you. Right. You don't know. You just don't know. Right. Yeah, so without someone fully explaining, this is what I do, this is who I serve, this is how I can help you in your business.
Yes. It's hard to filter through all of that. It really is. And I think it's hard to, like, first of all, choose what you're going to implement. But I think, it's kind of easy to stay busy and say, like, I'm working on the business and let's get some more information, but there's no implementation. I think that's huge. I really do. So, yeah, interesting.
Agreed. And even with implementation, and I know at the beginning we're talking about the other companies. So like the company that I have, Systems and AI, right, which is an AI automation company. I have people that come to me and they say, hey, listen, I want automation. I want to automate my business. Well, what do you want to automate? What does that mean? Are you clear as to what you want? Because what you may be asking is just overload for your business type. But
right.
just like in mind and body, people aren't clear as to who they are. They're not
Yeah.
clear as to who they serve. They're not clear as to their business. And that's really the bottleneck, just a lack of clarity as to what's going on overall.
Yes. And I think that that's where, like you with your automation business, maybe you can have a conversation with them and figure out, okay, just like I do, here's your
Right,
symptoms. What does
right,
that mean? Like, let's go down and figure out what's
right.
the lowest common denominator, and let's do that instead of starting at the surface. Okay, let's just automate stuff. No, what are you actually looking for, and how is that going to actually change your life and your business and like your day to day? And I
Correct.
do get that people need help, like
Yeah.
interpreting or understanding what they even want or what they even need. They don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But it's as easy as a quick, maybe not quick, but it's easy as a kind of like a conversation with the right person.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And it
Yeah, that's
really
why
is.
we do a business audit. And for you, it would be
Mhm.
that, I guess, intake when you're speaking with them and you're
Yes.
like, okay,
Mhm.
let's get down to the root of
Right.
why you're here, why you're
Mhm.
not. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. So I hope that that's the hope part for people. It's just
yeah.
like, there's information. Oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. Well, go to someone that does.
Mm-hmm.
Go to someone that can interpret your problem and fix it for you.
Mm-hmm.
We're not supposed to figure all this stuff out on our own.
Correct.
But I think entrepreneurs, especially, they're kind of just a bit lonely.
It is a lonely path. It
Yeah.
is a lonely path because you are figuring it out. And that's why I always ask guests, about
Mhm.
mentorship. Like,
Yeah.
do you believe in mentorship? Do you have a mentor? And let me pose that question to you. Do you have a mentor, and do you have someone or a team of people or group
Mhm.
that you're in that kind of helps and supports you? Because this is a lonely journey.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think that is so important. And yes, I've had a lot of people that have poured into me and believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. They're like, "You're amazing. You can do it." I'm like, "What?" Which has been so nice. So I do have some um, mentor colleagues that are in my world. But what's funny is that I've learned the most from people that are in completely different industries and
Mm,
felt supported most by people that are, you know, one of my, well, a couple of my most favorite people. One of them owns a huge cleaning company. One of them is in finance. One of them is a business coach. But for a time, like the person that taught me how to do social media, he was a power washer. And so I have a group here locally that I go to, and it's all about relationships and connection and building each other up. And it's not like transactional, throw a business card. And that has helped so much because the my old business coach, he says, just because you're in business by yourself doesn't mean you have to be in business. No, the wrong way. Just because you're in business for yourself doesn't mean you have to be in business by yourself.
mm-hmm.
And I
I
think that's huge.
I 100% get that. And
Yeah.
and how do you feel about movement in your body? Because you're working all day, and I don't know if you're doing it on Zoom or in person. Like, how do
Hmm.
you incorporate that part of the body in what you're doing?
So, I do my virtual sessions like with a telehealth link through my CRM. So it's very similar to Zoom. And then in person, yeah, a lot of my work is just sitting in front of someone and doing muscle testing. But when I do my virtual sessions, I basically, um, kind of rig up I put my laptop up on a stool on the windowsill so I can stand up. So I'm trying to stand and do some of that to get some movement going.
Mm.
Um, so yeah, I'm kind of up and down throughout the day, incorporating that to keep the energy going.
Oh, can you give us some practical tips to
Mhm.
implement to help us?
With mind body.
mind and body. Yep.
Yes, I can. Okay, so there are these points on your wrist. They're called meridian access points, but there's 4 of them. So let me see if I can show this way. So let's do 3 of them. So there's 3 right here. If you just put your fingers, that light's kind of bad. If you put your fingers like this on your wrist, you'll gain access to these meridian access points, which meridians are in the acupuncture world. You can think of them as kind of like highways through the body. And they come from when you're developing as a fetus. So you kind of start as this kind of curled up ball, and then you develop in your fetal development. So the meridians are really interesting because like your pinky toe could be linked up to your headaches or whatever because of that development. So you access these points. Now, you can just touch all of them. This is called the FAST technique. It's a rapid stress reducing technique. And so you have these 2 emotional points on your forehead. And so say something's bothering you, business, this customer, you had a negative interaction with a customer, let's just use that. And you're just like, very upset or whatever. You can contact these points, these 3 points on the wrist, and then cover your forehead. And then you close your eyes, take deep belly breaths, and think about, try to contact that negative part of what happened. That customer, they, said all these lies about me, or they're very upset, and thinking about how much you're upset about it. And what will happen is this will keep all of those neuropeptides from getting stored in your system. So you will process out these emotions, okay? But you'll have to do it on both sides. So you think about it, 60 seconds maybe, taking deep breaths, and then you'll feel like it kind of lifts. You'll feel a shift. And then once you feel that shift, you do the other side. On the left side, you put your hand across your forehead, taking these deep breaths and thinking about that painful issue. Or you can do it for health issues. You can do it for anything that's bothering you. And that's just a way to kind of keep layers from coming on. It's not specific, but it is a good way to just kind of recenter and get that frustration or that anger or that sadness from settling into the tissues. So emotions are good. It's just you don't want them to not be processed. Mm-hmm. You don't want to do that. Okay, just power through them. No, let's let them process, feel how you feel, and then you're not going to have these chronic issues coming down the line. So that's something you can do, as much as you want, but you could do it twice a day. Could do it as a preventative measure. You can do it if you have a headache. Think about, my head hurts so bad. I'm thinking about that. And a lot of times you'll get a little bit of, it's a really good management technique.
Wow. I love that. And if you had to go back and give yourself some advice, what advice would that be? And what tool would you give yourself?
That's a really good question. Okay, so back before I started this business, okay, what advice would I give myself? I would say to probably be more compassionate towards myself and not be so hard on myself, and to try to think about all of, the good things that I'm doing, my good qualities. I tend to gear towards like, you should have done that. You could have done that better. You're not you're not doing enough. You're not doing it well enough. And so I think I would say just have a little bit more self-love and self-compassion for everything that you're doing and creating. And the tool that I would give myself, I always do my own work with other people. As a practitioner, I think I'm really just kind of one note, very into this mind body stuff. So that's my favorite tool. Another tool besides that would probably be a spiritual tool. I think that's the side that I kind of lean into when I'm in a very bad place. And when everything's good, I'm like, okay, thank you. I'm grateful, you know. But I think I would lean more into, the spiritual side and try to have more balance with that. Because it's just incredible knowing there's something bigger than you. There's this whole universe, there's this divine. And I think that that's the tool that I would add in besides everything else I'm doing in this physical world.
I love that. I love that. How can our listeners find you?
Okay, so you can find me on Facebook. I'm myself, Briana Bender with one N. And then everywhere else on my other social channels and my website, it's Mind Body Healing Studio. So my website, mindbodyhealingstudio.com, and then Instagram, TikTok. I don't have anything on YouTube yet, but I have a channel. It's called Mind Body Healing Studio. So almost got mind body healing, but not quite.
Awesome. Dr. Briana, thank you so much for joining us today. It was a pleasure to have you on.
Wow, thank you so much. I wasn't sure where we were going to go with all of this, but this has been very refreshing. And thank you so much for being a wonderful host and asking really, really amazing questions. You're really gifted at this.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank
You're
you so much.
welcome.
And to our
Thank
listeners,
you.
thank you so much for tuning in.
Mhm.